Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Ken, also known as MrKenDenis. If you guys are new to the channel, hello and welcome. And for everyone else, hey, glad to see you guys back. So today's video, as you guys can tell, I am going to share with you guys how I do my makeup differently now that I am 30. Okay, so let me just say this as well. My makeup routine has evolved throughout the years. It hasn't just like, oh my gosh, I'm 30, things are just so different now, I have to like change everything. I'd like to say my makeup routine has probably started evolving when I hit 26, because that's when I started to notice certain things about my skin. But now that I'm in 30, I can definitely see a big difference. Like when I look back at my old footage and stuff, not only has my makeup routine and application changed over the years because of my age, it's also changed because of trends, obviously. So, you know, back in the day, matte was like a huge thing, whereas now it's more like natural, dewy sort of like finishes, that sort of thing. So I am going to do a little bit of a chit chat, sort of like sit down video with you guys, explaining how I do things slightly differently. Okay, so I've just done my eye makeup off camera just because I feel like my eye makeup hasn't really changed ever since I was in my 20s. I think the technique is a little bit cleaner. I mean, I think this eyeshadow I've just done is probably not the cleanest I've done in quite some time, but I feel like everything is pretty much the same. I don't feel like my eyes have like dropped or drooped or anything like that, so I feel like that's still pretty much the same. I feel where I've changed the most is probably how I do my base. So one thing that I feel like I've really worked on over the years is a good skincare routine. So when I was younger, like in like early 20s, that sort of thing, I didn't really pay attention too much to my skin. I was kind of like relying on the resilience of my youthful skin. So pretty much like I didn't have to put moisturizers, eye cream or anything like that. Things would just sit nicely. Whereas now I'm a little bit pickier in terms of like what kind of face creams I put on, what kind of eye creams I apply just before I apply my makeup. So I've already done my skincare routine. I've also got some lip balm. So I've just got this one from Elizabeth Arden. This one's the 8-hour repair lip balm one. So yeah, just making sure that I've done my skincare right, because I find that, you know, after I hit 25, if I don't prep my skin right with the appropriate skincare, the makeup doesn't last as well, and it also kind of looks crusty and like wrinkly. So yeah, another step that I really feel like has been a big emphasis in my base routine, at least, is wearing a silicone-based primer. So whether it be a transparent one or a dewy one, as long as it's silicone-based, because I do have large pores, and also I've started developing fine lines on my forehead. Yeah, so I just need that. So if you guys aren't aware, silicone-based primers are really good at filling out the pores. So when makeup is applied on top, like your foundation, your powders and stuff like that, they don't end up sitting in the pores themselves. So you can kind of think of it as like filling in potholes in your face. Obviously there's only so much these things can do. Like if you have very deep lines, deep wrinkles, you may need something else, like skincare wise, to help with that. But for me, so far, my skin has been pretty good. As long as I keep my skin hydrated, moisturized, and using a silicone-based primer like this, it all works out. Another thing that I've also noticed as I've gotten older is my facial hair. Like my 5 o'clock shadow has gotten darker. When I was in my early 20s, I didn't really need to use a lot of color corrector. But like I said, as I've gotten older, I feel like I definitely need to wear a thicker layer or a more pigmented color corrector. So the one I'm currently using is still the Revolution Conceal and Correct, Conceal Correct Orange Corrector. I do have a video of me reviewing this. If you guys would like to watch that, I will link it on the screen and down in the description box down below for you guys as well. And also, before someone asks, yes, I am wearing contact lenses. These ones are from Solotica. These ones are the Hydra Core Gemstone lenses in Jade. I do have a discount code for you guys. If you guys would like to use it, I will leave it down in the description box down below. It gives you 10% off all orders on Vision Marketplace. Obviously you don't have to use that discount code, but I seriously would appreciate it if you guys would use it, because it also helps me out. You get a discount, helps me out, so it's like a win-win situation. So yeah, choice is up to you. So I'm just grabbing some Born This Way Ethereal setting powder. So I'm just going to use a bit of this to set that color corrector. Okay, so when I first started to really get into makeup, this was like 2008, 2009, 2010. Those were like the years I was really into makeup. The trend back then was really matte makeup, so matte foundations. The MAC Studio Fix Fluid was like the goals for foundation, and then on the opposite spectrum of it, you had the NARS Sheer Glow. I was definitely into the MAC Studio Fix Fluid, just because it was what everyone was into, and also my skin was a little bit oilier compared to what it is these days. I mean, to this day I still like wearing the MAC Studio Fix Fluid. I just feel like I need to make sure I really prep my skin, because it does, I feel, sit quite funny around the laugh lines and the forehead lines. Like, I never used to have smile line problems, but things just change on your face. In terms of coverage, nothing's changed. I still prefer full coverage foundations. I like full coverage, but definitely the finish is something that I am a little bit more particular about. I do prefer a demi matte or a slightly dewy foundation. I don't particularly like super dewy foundations because my skin is still somewhat oily. It's not oily, if that makes sense. So the foundation that I've been currently loving is this one from Lani. This one is the Conceal and Perfect 2-in-1 Foundation Concealer Foundation. This one I'm using is the shade number 5, Warm Beige. It's got really good coverage, and I'd say the finish is more of a demi matte finish, so that's definitely what I'm into. So I like using beauty sponges when I apply my foundation these days, for most foundations at least. This one is from Nikia Joy Cosmetics. I think I really got into beauty sponges when I was in like my early 20s, closer to mid 20s actually. I think before that everyone was really into like your buffing brushes, and I was definitely into buffing brushes as well, so like a kabuki brush, that sort of thing. But then, yeah, I think the beauty blender became like trending and everyone wanted to have a beauty sponge, and then the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge came out, and that's when I pretty much tried it and then got hooked. And I think that's also when I started to notice a little bit of like textural issues on my face. Not necessarily fine lines and wrinkles, but more so congestion on my forehead. I didn't really have very good skin back then. I think when I finished university, so I was like 24, 25, I think, I started to really pay attention more to my skin because I was filming more, so I was definitely looking at my skin a lot more, and I would always notice like I'd have like little bumps on my forehead, and you know, I didn't think they were that bad, but now that I look back at that footage, I'm like, wow, that was pretty bad. I still use kabuki type brushes, like I've got a couple here, but I just don't tend to use them as much, because most of my foundations, they tend to apply a lot better with a beauty sponge. So I've got the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer in number 20, pretty much just underneath my eyes. If you guys go back to my videos like maybe a couple of years ago, I used to do like the big triangle. Every now and then I'll still do it, but then I've kind of realized because of the amount of blush and stuff I put on, there's no point like highlighting that much. Next I'm going to grab the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind. This one is in light pale. So this one is a lot lighter, and I tend to just put this like towards the nose, like in the inner corner. Now I got this technique from someone, I forgot his name, Edward, I think his name, or Edwards is his name. So bad at remembering names, but I remember his face. So he basically likes doing like a really light concealer in the inner corner sort of area. That way it brings more light there, but not too much on the outer corner. So that's kind of like a technique that I've been trialing out recently, but the main difference from when I did my makeup in my 20s is like I don't do a huge triangle anymore. Again, using the beauty sponge, starting at the lighter area first, and then bouncing it upwards. And then also another thing that I do differently compared to when I was in my 20s is I really bring that lighter concealer kind of towards the edge of the nose, and then I also kind of like highlight just the top of my cheeks, again not bringing it down too far. I feel like this just gives a really nice illuminated effect. And back then I also did very, very harsh light concealer. I think that was also when Kim Kardashian was like really, really big. I mean, like, she's still big now, but the whole super bright under eye was like a big thing back then. So I did that as well, obviously trying to keep up with the trends and stuff. And then I also did like really, really yellow concealers and like the baking banana powder. Who remembers that? Everyone was like, I need to get that Ben Nye banana powder. I definitely had one of those like for ages, because those things last forever. And I used to bake a lot. I'll get to that in a second as well. But yeah, so with the concealer, I pretty much just blend it all the way up. And then what I do these days as well is I use the remaining foundation on the bottom of the sponge and kind of just go over the edges. All right, we're gonna move on to baking. I do not bake anymore like I used to, where I used to like really dunk the sponge into the powder and like really cake it on and like have this big like cluster of powder underneath the eyes. For one, my under eyes are not as smooth as they used to. Like now they have a lot of like fine lines, and I find that when I do that method with the wet sponge and really packing it on, it really highlights the lines and can sometimes even dehydrate. Like it kind of looks dehydrated and really emphasizes more lines more than anything. So I stopped doing that. So instead what I've been doing is I've been grabbing brushes like this. So this one is from Quartz Beauty, so this is Crystal Conti's brand. This is the mini powder brush, so something like this. And then I just grab whichever setting powder that I'm using. I do still sometimes use the sponge method depending on the powder. Like I find finishing powders are fine, setting powders definitely not. I feel like because finishing powders have like that filter finishing effect, so it's not too bad. Yeah, the Nakia Joy Velvet finishing powder, I think it's called. That one's really good for baking as well. But like for this one from Too Faced, I can't do that. So what I do is just like load up the brush, dust off the excess, and then lightly dab. I don't swirl or anything like that. I just sort of like do a light dab, because then I'm still sort of setting it with a baking sort of like motion, but without really putting too much product there, that it dehydrates the concealer or dries up the concealer completely, and also the skincare that I might have underneath. And then I also do the same just on my forehead where I've got those forehead lines. It's really just this main one up here that I really set. The rest of it I'm not too fussed because they're not too bad, they're not too deep. Alright, we're gonna set the rest of the face. So I'm just using this one from Savvy. I feel like this technique of setting my face, I've been doing it for forever. I don't think this has pretty much changed. So I just load my brush up with powder and then dab, 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 not swirl. Again, I feel like this method sets the foundation enough without adding too much coverage, and also it doesn't disrupt the color or the foundation that's underneath. I used to, like when I first started to get into makeup, I used to do like that swirl dusting method, but I found that it actually moves a lot of the product off the skin, and that's a big no-no. Next, we're going to move on to contour blush highlighting. So for today's demonstration purposes, I've got this one from Morphe. This one is the face palette. This one is 8T Totally Tan. I like to contour first, so I'm just grabbing my NARS Ita brush. I'm just going to use the actual contour shade in this palette. Now the reason why I like doing contour first is because I find that contour sometimes can be a bit tricky, because a lot of the contour powders that I use these days are a lot more pigmented than the ones I used to use in the past. So I like to contour first because I find that if I do contour last, it either becomes too harsh or it takes away from all the other colors that are on my face. And I've just noticed, why don't I do the other way around? Because then if the contour is a bit harsh, I can just, you know, dust some more blush on and dust some bronzer, and that kind of covers it. So that's just my way of thinking, and I feel like it works for me now. Oh, and by the way, I like using the NARS Ita brush. I think back in the day I used to use angled brushes like this. Like they work, but with the angled brushes, obviously they splay out a bit, so it's a little bit diffused. And with contour, you kind of want it to be, not kind of, you actually want it to be precise. So I prefer something like this, and it's also not too stiff. There are other brushes that kind of look like a paintbrush, like a really short, stiff paintbrush. They work as well, but I find that because it's so stiff, it can move product underneath the skin as well. So I tend to avoid using those. I prefer this. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my nose contour. Like 9 times out of 10 I'll just use this and just kind of like etch out the sides of my nose. I used to be quite elaborate with my nose contour, where I would like really draw like 2 brown lines and then kind of like shape off the bottom of my nose, because that's what everyone was doing and I thought that's how I should be doing it, but then I realized I don't actually need it. I just kind of like want a little bit of definition on the sides of my nose. And also I've learned to love my nose. I used to hate it because growing up, being Filipino, I always used to get called bango, which is basically like flat-nosed. Yeah. So I had a complex because when I was younger, my nose was a lot flatter, and as I've gotten older, my nose bridge just like kicked in. But yeah, I always like really felt insecure about my nose, so I really contour the hell out of my nose. But nowadays I actually really like the way my nose looks. It's just when I do wear makeup, obviously everything is like chiseled, and if I don't chisel my nose, then it kind of gets lost in translation, especially with all this brightness underneath. So I always contour the nose. So I just use a big fluffy brush like this. This one is a Sigma tapered blending brush E40 if you guys are interested. And by the way, I do have a discount code for Sigma as well if you guys would like to use that. But pretty much the same, like kind of like dust the sides and kind of blend the sides out. I don't do anything on the tip, like at the bottom. I feel like my nose naturally kind of like tips up anyway, so I don't have to do that. And I also kind of like bring it into the brow like that. I feel like that's more natural, especially when I'm wearing like darker heavy eyeshadow like what I'm doing now. Okay, now we're gonna move on to blush. Blush definitely has changed, probably more so in the last few months. Blush, I kind of steered away from it after 25 maybe. Like I'd wear blush every now and then, especially if a brand wanted me to wear it, but I didn't really gravitate towards blush, and I'd always use something like this. So an angled brush. I don't know if you can tell, but I've got huge cheeks, so for me to use this, it kind of would always look a bit streaky, like a line. And I think that's also why I stopped wearing blush, because I couldn't really figure out how to wear it properly quickly. So if I had to use one of these, I'd like take my time and kind of like layer it, and sometimes my blush would be a little bit too much, hence why I stopped using that. Nowadays I've been using this ginormous brush. I don't know if you can see, but this is like huge. Let's just compare that to the brush I used to use. Yeah, like that's huge. This is actually a powder brush from Models Prefer. So what I like to do is I actually like using these because I feel like they actually suit my cheeks more, because like look, my cheeks are huge. So that's why I like using that. So in this particular palette we've got 2 colors to choose from. I'll go for the slightly pinky one. This one's more peach. And I used to, I think I used to like always smile when I applied my blush. These days I'm not really fussed anymore. I kind of just bring it up higher as opposed to like smiling, because yeah, I don't want to crease in case I haven't set everything properly. And then also I kind of bring it to the edge of the eye as well. Like you don't have to, but that's how I like doing it. I feel like it really lifts up the face a bit more. And again, concentrating on the apples of the cheeks and then kind of like bring it up. Now we're going to move on to bronzer. When it came to bronzer, I think I wasn't very adventurous with my bronzer. I would like just do a light dusting, whereas these days I really love that really tanned forehead, like really nice bronzy glow. Yeah, I think because I think I never really got into bronzer because I could never really find a bronzer that was, 1, affordable enough, and 2, had the right undertone for me, because a lot of the bronzers that I could get from the drugstore were quite cool tone because they were developed for more fairer skin tones. I'm not the deepest like in complexion, but you know what I mean, like I'm fairly tanned, and if you put a cool toned bronzer, like a really strong cool toned bronzer on me, it's just gonna look quite muddy. So I definitely like orangey, not so much red bronzers, but definitely orangey bronzers. So this particular palette has two bronzers as well. They're both on the orange side. For this particular look, I'm going to use this one. This one I feel is a little bit more on the red side of things. I'm just loading my brush. So the one I'm using is from Mecca Cosmetica. This one is the all over finishing brush. So I think I used to use fairly small powder brushes as well, something maybe like this. And again, I find that because my face isn't very small, I need to use big fluffy brushes. That way I can get more product on those areas. I don't have to work too hard, and it diffuses it nicely as opposed to like a smaller brush, because with a smaller brush obviously it can sort of like be streaky. And I still do the 3 method, and this is where I feel like all the blending happens on my cheeks, which is why I do the contour first, because if it's too harsh, I've got the blush to kind of like dull it down. I've also got the bronzer to blend everything together. Just like that. I try not to put too much bronzer like in this center part here, because I really want the light to be focused in the middle of my face. And I really focus the bronzer on the forehead. Like I really go ham. Like sometimes my forehead's like way too dark when I've overdone it. Okay, so that's the bronzing part done. Now we're gonna move on to highlighters. I used to go for like the super blinding highlighters, like you know when highlighters became like a big thing. Yeah, I used to go for metallic highlighters. These days a little bit more toned down, and definitely less cool tone, definitely for me. So the one I've got here is from Maybelline. This one is the Master Chrome Metallic Highlighter in 100 Molten Gold. Honestly, one of the most beautiful highlighters I've ever used. So there's still days that I go quite ham with the highlighter, I'm not gonna lie, but for the most part I try not to go too extra with it. So I tend to use something like this to apply my highlighter. This one is from Revlon. So when it comes to placement, I think I used to do like a whole streak, like starting from, I don't know, like what beyond the corner of my eye. So the actual corner of my eye is here. I used to bring it out like from here and then like do a straight line up, and it doesn't suit my face. I've seen other people do it and it suits their face really well, but because the angle of my cheekbones are kind of like this way instead of that way, I can't do that. And my face is uneven as well, so for me I have to do it this way for this angle, and then this side it has to be like that. And I find that if I bring it all the way back, it kind of looks weird on my face. So I've just learned how to adjust that technique for my face. So I literally just pack on the highlighter on my brush like that. Now this brush is clean, so I really take my time. We'll do it on this side first. So I pretty much just start at the outer corner of my eye. Bring it out slightly, but not all the way out. Pretty much just the top of my cheekbone, like that. I feel like that is so natural looking, and you know, it doesn't look weird. Like I know like sometimes we go ham for highlighter because it looks great for the gram and it looks great on camera, but you also have to kind of remember sometimes you wear makeup because you go out, and people are going to look at you and you don't have the liberty of a nice filter or face tune to hide behind. So yeah, that's what I pretty much just do. Also, another thing that I've noticed with my face as I've gotten older is my trough, which is kind of like this dip in my eye, kind of extends down on my cheek. So I can't like bring the I think I've done that a little bit today. Like bring the highlighter down a little bit much because it really highlights that line. Like from the front on, it doesn't look too bad, but like when you turn to the side, you can kind of see that slight dip in my cheek. Unfortunately with that sort of stuff you have to use filler to like kind of push that up, which I'm not going to be doing anytime soon. So yeah, that's kind of why my technique for highlighting has changed as well. And then for the nose, I just use the same brush. I think I used to use a small blending brush to really, again, my insecurity with my nose, because of my upbringing and my culture, I really highlighted my nose. That way my nose looked pointier, more refined, matangos. So yeah. Okay, so I actually proceeded to do the rest of my eye makeup. Sorry, I actually forgot to start recording. But another thing that I've changed with my eye makeup, like the top bit's pretty much the same, but the bottom, like lash line, it's completely different now. I use a kohl liner pretty much on the waterline, and then smudge it onto the lower lash line, just using a smudger brush like this. Gives it a nice smoky effect. If you look at my Instagram, a lot of my looks tend to have like this like really smoky under eye. Because I realized when I was like 24, 25, if I'd go really heavy on top and I don't do anything on the lower lash line, it kind of really closes up my eye. Whereas I find like when I do it like this, it's like balanced, like because of the darkness, it's like pulling my eye up, and then it's doing the same thing pretty much on the lower lash line, if that makes sense. Now we're going to move on to lashes. I think that's one of the biggest things that's changed for me as well. I used to swear by just mascara, like I would never wear lashes, and whenever I do, I just kind of didn't really like how it looked. I felt like it was a bit too much. Now the bigger the better. Okay, lashes are on. So depending on the lashes, I will put another layer of mascara, but I feel like they look fine right now. But yeah, I just really like this sort of like style. Again, this is the I Heart This pair. I just find that they really suit my eye shape, and they just really flare out at the end. Not too much, like I said, doesn't give you like that foxy eye look, but just enough that it lifts the corner of the eyes, because my eyes tend to like droop down a bit on the corners. Anyway, now we're gonna move on to the lips. So I'm really enjoying using a dark brown lip liner. So this one is Toasty from Morphe. That's also another thing, I never used to wear lip liner. I always got really insecure about my lips because in the Filipino culture, my lips are quite big, and I always, like, not always, but it would be always something that people would point out that my lips were thicker. They're not super thin. Like back in the day, the standard of beauty in the Philippines was like very thin lips, and because my lips weren't super thin, it was kind of like not ideal. So obviously with lip lining, you're bringing more emphasis to the shape of the lip and can kind of make your lips look bigger. So I didn't like doing that because I felt like, oh, I don't want too much attention on the lip. So I'd go for like super like very close to my skin tone color or lighter, that way it wasn't too obvious. I am going to be using a lipstick that's much lighter than my lip color, but because of the lip liner, you guys are going to see. Really like this. Alright, let's move on to setting sprays. I think I used to be very into matte finishes, but then I kind of like slowly moved on to dewy finishes. So I'm pretty much into like dewy finish setting sprays. It just looks nicer and also gets rid of that sort of like powdered cakey finish sometimes you get when you've applied a lot of product on your skin. Okay, so that is the final look. This is, I would say, like a typical look that I tend to go for these days, kind of like nice and dramatic on the lashes and eyes, and just really nice skin, like base. Like that's just like my main thing these days. And yeah, depending on how dramatic I am with the eyes, I tend to just go for like a nude lip. I think back in the day I used to wear like really pink lipsticks as well. That's also one thing I forgot to mention. Again, it's like my age and also current trends as well, and also like as I've started filming this, realizing self-love as well, like loving my own features and loving like certain things about my face that I used to didn't really like. Yeah, and just like playing things out. I think contacts, I've always just worn contacts just because I like playing around with my look in that sense. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Definitely let me know down in the comment box down below if you guys have any suggestions of videos I should be filming next. I'm kind of stuck for ideas at the moment, so any suggestions is helpful. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys would like to see more of my videos, definitely check out the eye on the screen down in the description box down below. I have other videos that I would recommend you guys watching that you may be interested in watching yourself. And also, if you guys want to see more of me behind the scenes, definitely check out my Instagram. I post stories pretty much every day, at least I try. And that's pretty much it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.